it's Flo, and this is my impression of a person having a phone conversation in the elevator. What? Yeah, no, I'm in the elevator. The elevator! Yeah! Anyway, I bundled our home and auto insurance through Progressive. No, bundled! We're gonna save big bucks now. No, bucks! Bucks!
Bundle your home and auto through Progressive and save.
Hello? Hello? She hung up.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates. Home insurance provided and serviced by other select insurers.
Blog Talk Radio.
Hey, welcome everybody to Grilling Crew Super Bowl week. I'm your host, Mike Goodpaster. I want to welcome in tonight, I guess, my co-host, Mark Cooper, played for the Denver Broncos in Super Bowl 21. How you doing tonight, Mark?
Good. Hey, are you excited or what?
Not really. I'm not at all. I don't like either team. I hope they both lose, to tell you the truth, but wrong teams in.
Well, it was funny, your interview with my buddy Gary Dunn, how you guys threw me under the bus at the very end was pretty funny. Oh,
no, I protected you the whole time. I didn't let Gary say anything bad about you. I just let him speak the truth.
There we go.
Well, we'll get to Super Bowl 50.
Bengal answer.
You don't have to act like Matt Andrews scavenge and pick on me all the time, all right? He's supposed to be on here, and so's Leon Searcy, so I don't know where they went, but what the hell. They're probably out partying together or something in San Francisco while we sit here and just talk about the game. But we'll bring up Super Bowl 50 here in a little bit. But first, we're going to get to your Super Bowl experience a little bit. You played in Super Bowl 21 against the New York Giants. Tell me a little bit about what it was like after you won the Super Bowl to ticket requests. I'm sure you had people that you didn't even remember that wanted tickets to the game. I mean, what do you recall about that?
Well, if you remember, what got us there was the AFC Championship game against Cleveland Browns, and that was called the Drive. So, what was an interesting week prior, 2 weeks prior, obviously, was playing in Cleveland, getting pummeled by dog bones, batteries, and everything else while you're standing in the huddle. They were telling us all to keep our helmets on and everything that went with that. And it was – I've never been around – and I've played in a lot of stadiums. I've never been around a stadium that was that absolutely crazy. So, that was kind of like John Elway's come-out game, and we drove it 99 yards at the end of the game to put the game into overtime, not to win it. And then they got the kickoff, drove it down. We stopped, and then we drove it down and kicked the field goal to win the game. And then to go on to Super Bowl 21 and play the New York Giants.
Real quick, before you get to that,
yeah.
you brought up the Drive. Wasn't going to bring it up, but what was it like? I mean, John Elway was known as one of those quarterbacks that did that kind of stuff all the time. I mean, what was he like in the huddle on the final drive?
John had come off we had a TV timeout, and Keith Bishop was in the huddle with us, obviously the left guard, and I was playing right guard. And we had this thing where if we were just, getting drubbed or having a tough time with a team, or we were down or something, somebody would crack a joke in the huddle. And Keith would always go, hey, we got him right where we want him. And he had just busted that joke in the huddle when we're sitting on our 1 yard line with 99 yards to go, and John comes walking in the huddle. Well, he comes jogging in the huddle, obviously. And we're all in there laughing. And he just kind of looks at us, and he goes, what the hell's going on? And, Bish busts out again. Hey, John, we got it right where we want him. So we all had a pretty good giggle in the huddle. And then he just kind of looked around the huddle. He goes, hey, guys, we got a long way to go. Let's roll. And John was all business. I mean, John, he didn't, get on receivers. He didn't, he was all business in the huddle. And they had gone into they had spied all game and brought a lot of blitzes, and they wanted to do a prevent with a spy, with Banks spying on Elway. But, I really don't think anybody realized how fast John was, because John outran Banks a few times on some scrambles that, really helped, put us in great field position a couple times. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget how mobile a quarterback he was. He was mainly your main running game that year, wasn't he?
Well, John, John, I think he and Steve Young, I think, created the quarterback draw. because a lot of guys, never really ran that until those guys, because they could run. And had success at doing it too. I mean, John scored a touchdown in Super Bowl 21 on a quarterback draw, believe it or not, from about the 12-yard line. So, you spread them out, and they bring that 4-man rush, and we'd position guys to try and open a spot in the middle, and we'd run a quarterback draw when it looked like we were going to throw the ball. So he had a lot of success with that.
Well, you go to Super Bowl week. You want to talk a little bit? I mean, I think that was, you guys had the 2 weeks in between. You want to talk a little bit about the preparation, ticket request? I mean, how you took care of that?
Oh, yeah, that was kind of funny now that you think about it. Well, so we went to Newport Beach, and I forget the name of the college we went to, but we were there and practicing and everything else that, we had invited to the game. And I don't even remember how much the tickets were, but this year tickets for players are like $1,500, and I think they go up from there for Super Bowl 50. But tickets back then, if I remember, were probably in the $500-600 range, if I'm thinking right. And I forget how many we got, but it wasn't a lot. So I ended up buying a handful of extra tickets, but I didn't have to buy too many. And we practiced at this college there in Newport Beach. And I'll tell you what kind of was weird, and when you look back on things, there's probably more clarity than when you're in it. But we didn't do a lot. I mean, we didn't go out at night a lot. We pretty much, were kind of sequestered, you might say. We had a lot of meetings and stuff like that. And when you did go out, you only had a few hours to go out, because I think they just wanted to minimize any potential damage that could happen with knuckleheads. And you'd go out to eat with your family or the folks that were in town for the game, and people could come to the hotel and see and stuff like that. And they could go to practice too. So, like I said, I think they kind of kept us somewhat sequestered for the most part. And it was the week went fast, but I remember our Thursday practice. I mean, it was so violent that I thought we peaked before the Super Bowl, believe it or not. And at the time, you think you're getting ready for the Super Bowl, and you're hey, we're actually pumped up. Had one of the best practices of the week, et cetera. But I think we may have actually peaked on a Thursday, because I think we might have left it there on the field that day, because there was fights and everything else, and I think everybody was just so pumped up, and we had that team hadn't been to a Super Bowl in years, and so there weren't a lot of veterans that had played.
1977, I think, was the last time, so it'd been almost a decade.
Exactly, that's correct. Yep, 77 against the Dallas Cowboys, and so that was that. Like I said, hindsight's 20/20. At the time, you thought, man, we were cranked up and ready to roll, and we had a good first half. We had a good first half against the Giants. We were down on the 2-yard line, and John comes to the huddle and calls toss, and I just remember Bishop and I looking, and the offensive line looking at each other, going, toss. And we said, John, let's run. We had counter tray, and we had this narrow pinch, and we had a couple inside trap games, and we said, hey, let's change that. And John just looked at us and goes, Reeves call. And he didn't have a lot of liberties back then, which he was into his 4th year with Dan Reeves at the time, and tensions were a little high, and John had some latitude for a while, and then Dan would take it away. And in this game, I don't think he had any, obviously, because we ran toss. I mean, you had Lawrence Taylor on one end, and you had Chip Banks on the other end, and you had Reeves was a decent linebacker, nothing like Carson. You had Burt in the middle. You had I'm trying to run her down.
Leonard Marshall on that team.
Marshall. Yep. And but I knew we'd have success inside, because Burt was an undersized guy, and you could double him off to a linebacker. But we run toss one way, we're 7 yards back in our backfield, so we've just lost yardage, and comes back in, we run toss the other way, and now we're back on like our 12, and we're just before we're going into half, we're going to kick a field goal and still go up, and Carlos misses like a 17 or 18, 21-yard field goal as we're going into halftime, and that kind of took the winds out of the sails a little bit. Not necessarily in the huddle because we were, of the mind, we still got a whole half to play. And
you guys were in the lead at
halftime,
weren't you, 10-9?
Yeah, and we could have been up quite a bit more. We should have been up by another 7, but things didn't happen right, obviously.
And no point.
So
no
you're going to
conversion back then, so you're up by 2 scores if you plug it in the end zone.
Yeah, and probably feeling pretty good. And then what was weird about that game was Phil Simms had the game of his career, and that's why I think he's an announcer today.
Yeah, he's a terrible announcer, by the way, too.
Yeah, I agree. And to tell you what's really funny is the Denver fans hate him. They've lobbied to get him off Denver games and everything else because he's so everybody out here feels like he's biased.
No, I think he's just
Denver,
terrible.
Yeah, I agree. You know what? I agree with that. I totally agree with that. But that's made his career. That one night made that guy's career. So here we are, 20-some years later, and you go, wow, one game. Because that guy was a journeyman, in my view. He was like a Dilfer. He had a tremendous defense.
Oh, I think he was a lot better than Trent Dilfer. I think it was a lot better than Trent Dilfer.
All right. You know what?
He got those Giants teams to the playoffs a lot, but then again, they had a great defense. You had Joe Morris, who people forget about, was a really good running back also.
He was, and you had McConkey, you had Bavard, you had a decent slew of receivers. They had a really good offensive line.
Well, and then you had Bill
Bart
Belichick
Oates
on the defense and Bill Parcells as the head coach. It doesn't hurt either.
Yeah. No, I couldn't argue with that.
I think you got to give him at least a good quarterback because Trent Dilfer wasn't 22 for 25 in the Super Bowl. And Trent Dilfer didn't do it against the '86 Broncos. He did it against the 2000 Giants, a little bit of a difference there in what they did.
Well, it was, what was funny is he had bounce passes, ricochets being caught. He had stuff getting caught that you were like, it was like a circus back out there. And we're just sitting there watching this thing going, oh my God, we can't do a thing right.
I think that '86 Giants team was just one of those teams that was their year no matter what happened.
I think you're right.
If you look at them, they were really good the year before. They lost, I think, in the divisional playoffs to the Niners. The year after that, they weren't actually the 2 years after that, 3 years after that, they weren't very good. But until '89, they were pretty good. In '90, they finally won the Super Bowl again. But they were a complete team with I would say, slightly above average quarterback.
Yeah, and what was weird is having a 3-week period where you had one of your highest highs of your life, right? And one of your lowest lows of your life. So that was a very kind of interesting, 3-week to a month period of time because, winning an AFC championship and overtime and everything else and all the adversity that went with that. And then I just remember sitting on that bus, leaving the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, and you were like almost suicidal. It was such a letdown. And you're running back through your mind, what could you have done? Is there any plays you could have done something better on? And so you're second guessing everything you did, your preparation, and the week of practice, and everything else. So that's not a good feeling, and but it's something you remember, because it was just such a great opportunity, to win a Super Bowl, and it is so hard to get to a Super Bowl. People don't realize that. Everybody in Denver expects the Broncos to be there every year. And
people, you look at all the great players that never even got the opportunity that you got.
Well, it's weird. I was reading a thing today. So Houston, Cleveland, Jacksonville, and there's one other team, I can't remember who it was, have never been to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you sit there and you go, wow. In 50 years, there's been 4 teams with now 32 teams in the league that have never, ever even been there. Oh, Detroit.
Yeah, in Houston's defense, they came in 2000. Jacksonville's defense, they didn't come in until 95. Cleveland has no defense. Actually, that's one of the reasons Cleveland doesn't make it to the Super Bowl. They don't have any defense. But
no pun intended.
Yeah, it was completely intended, by the way. So, you brought up something I always wanted to ask a Denver Bronco, which I've had Dennis Smith, a few other guys that played with you on the show before. What was the chemistry between Dan Reeves and John Elway?
It wasn't good. I mean, I was John's roommate our rookie year, and here's Dan Reeves was a Landry protege, and we ran basically the Dallas Cowboys system here in Denver at that point in time. And Reeves would yell and scream at John during the game, which drove me crazy because I played for Howard Snellenberger at the University of Miami, and Howard was such a general, whereas Reeves was during the week, and I thought he prepared us well. I thought we always had a pretty good game plan, and we would do a real good job of executing it for the most part. But there were times on the sideline that Dan Reeves would just go absolutely berserk. And you would just walk a wide circle around them. And you can see stuff from the sidelines that you can't see, behind the line of scrimmage. And I just remember some of the comments that were made to John, and I just thought, and I know John was extremely frustrated our rookie year, let alone going into his second and third and fourth year. And I just didn't understand how a guy like Dan couldn't, assimilate to a guy like John, and instead of pressing John into his offense, design the offense, that he had a little bit more around John. So that always bugged me.
And the thing is, you had a great quarterback, and I don't think there's any doubt Dan Reeves was a hell of a coach. I mean, he goes to Atlanta, takes them to a Super Bowl also. But the big thing is, why couldn't they get along? And if they do get along, does it change those years and turn into more Super Bowls?
I think it would have. When Shanahan was here as our offensive coordinator, we got a little bit more creative. And then the reason, the word on the street was, and I totally agree with it, was Shanahan got too close to John and was more, we would run stuff. Just use an example. We would run plays the way Dan wanted us to run them in practice, and then we'd put a different wrinkle and run them in the games the way Shanahan wanted them to run. And 99% of the time they were successful that way. And if they weren't, we would take the heat for it. And but I think Dan figured out that John, he was getting too close to John. They let him go. And
I know he ended up being a Raiders coach for a little bit there.
Yeah, he bounced around there, and I think Kansas City. I can't remember where else he bounced around to, but what was weird though? I think Shanahan turned a little bit into a Dan Reeves at the end of his career because he wanted all that power that Dan had, as a GM and as a head coach and all that kind of stuff. So it was kind of weird watching that happen. And I couldn't say that I was close enough that I could put my foot on that, but that's what it looked like talking to players that I knew that were playing for him.
Yeah. All right, well, let's transition a little bit. You didn't get to be on the Pick'em show with Leon, myself, and Matt, so you didn't get to pick the game. What do you think the keys are for the Broncos to win Super Bowl 50?
Boy, I'll tell you, the defense is playing so well now. I've had giggles all season long on the Pick'em show when I would have said they were the best defense since the Steelers.
Don't try that again. Last time you said that, they gave up 31 to the Colts, so they might give up 50 to Carolina if you say that.
Yep, I probably should keep my mouth shut on that one. But you know what? If they can play the way they played against the Patriots and they can put that kind of pressure on Cam Newton the way they did on Brady, I mean, they had 23 hits on the guy. And they weren't, the secondary Stewart was out and Talib went out. So, all these guys are healed up and healthy, and so is the Panthers. So I think it's going to be a great game. But, if that defense can play like they have played all year, and you can put the kind of pressure we put on the Patriots, on Cam, and they'll have I'm sure they'll have a linebacker playing some spy. And one thing about the Bronco linebackers is they're fast. I mean, those guys can run like deer. And I know Cam's a big stud, but I really think if that defense can play like they have played, and Demaryius Thomas shows up on offense and our receivers catch the ball, and there's a lot of ifs there as you're hearing me, I still like our odds. I still like Peyton. I think, he's got a little bit of a rap this year with a lot of these receivers dropping balls and the things that have gone on, and then, getting hurt, and then Brock stepping in and doing a pretty good job. But if Peyton can't get the job done, you got a guy right there to come step right back in. So I think Peyton will handle the game like the pro he is, and I think the Broncos win by 3. I really do.
I think the problem is the Denver offensive line. Just like for New England against Denver, their problem was the offensive line. And the thing that worries me is Arizona had a good defense, but Arizona gave up 49 points because their offense was turning the ball over on their own side of the field. That's the thing that worries me for Denver during this game.
And I would agree with that. But as we spoke about during the year, Carson Palmer, I think his finger was worse than we thought it was. And you know how these injury reports go. I mean, when Peyton was injured a year or two ago, he was injured pretty bad, and I thought the Broncos were going to get fined or, lose a draft pick or something with all the shenanigans that have gone on. So it's always tough to know how beat up guys are. I agree with you. Our offensive line is not a very good offensive line. They've been ragtag put together, but they did a decent job against the Patriots, and they did a decent job, against Pittsburgh. And if we can get a few holes and run the ball, as at 100 yards, we can get over 100 yards in offense, rushing the football. Like I said, I think the Broncos can win that football game, but I think it's going to be a close game. Cam Newton's going to probably break a tackle or two, and he's going to probably run downfield and do a little damage here and there, and they're going to score points, and so are we. So, it's just going to come down, again, I think, to the defense playing the way they played all year, and you kind of, keep your fingers crossed, your toes crossed, your legs crossed, because these Super Bowl games, man, they go either way, and I'm not a real big betting guy. And, because all week, hey, who you betting on? I go, I don't ever bet on the Super Bowl. I just think anything can happen in a Super Bowl. So I'm not a big bettor to start out with because I hate to lose anything, let alone, a bet. But I just think that the Broncos, I just think it's their year. I really do.
Well, everybody in Carolina thinks it's their year too, but that's how every Super Bowl is going in. The other concern I have, if I'm Carolina, which is something I like if I'm Denver, I believe to attack Peyton Manning, they're going to have to run a little bit differently on defense than what they normally do. They run a lot of the cover two, a lot of help over the top, which leaves the middle of the field open. I think Owen Daniels can take advantage of that. Maybe they can get a time machine and get Vernon Davis too also, because I think that plays to Peyton's advantage if they are running that coverage. Because I think the passes Peyton has trouble with now, the floaters, are usually either really deep balls or they're outside of the hash marks. So, to me, if I'm Carolina, I'm going to try to invert everything and take away the inside of the field and make him throw the ball outside of the hash marks.
Yeah, and, the thing that bothered me the most about the coaching change, I wanted the coaching change because I thought Fox coached not to lose, is, Peyton struggled all year trying to learn this offense, and they took him out of the shotgun, they put him in the pistol so we could get a downhill run with a one back in the backfield, and it pretty much took all year for that to happen, and that was my worry coming into the year, is with a new system, new coaches. Peyton's a smart guy. He's been around forever. I figured he'd assimilate. I just, it just took a lot longer to happen than I thought it was going to. But a lot of that had to do with the offensive line, and the running backs are have as big a responsibility. And when an offensive line is zone blocking, that running back has as big a responsibility as setting up that some of those holes by making linebackers commit and then putting their foot in the ground. So I think a lot of that took a lot longer for this team to happen, and so you hope at the end of the season, where we're at now, that they're on an uphill tick. But so is Carolina, and they got Jared Allen. I guess he's healed up and you got a pretty good defensive front across there to play against. So, like I said, that's the thing that's fun about going into Super Bowls. I mean, I don't think you really know who's going to win the football game. And that's why they play the game. So somebody has to come out on top and get that ring. And there's nothing more disappointing than not winning it.
It hadn't been as much in the last 10 or 15 years, but past Super Bowls, usually the team that scored first won because the team that falls behind panics more than they do in a regular, normal situation.
I hadn't really thought about it like that. Is that a statistic or something that's popped up?
It was for like the first 30-some Super Bowls. The last 10 or 15 years, not so much. But I think a lot of that's because Tom Brady's been the guy behind a lot, and I don't think anything really phases him. But, I mean, if you look at it, you've worked your whole life to get to this one game. It's just like 2 years ago when they played Seattle. You come out, the first play, ball snapped over his head, you're immediately down to 2-0, and I think you've got basically an all shit moment.
Yeah.
Where, and then things just kind of steamroll because you fall behind. And I think in a situation, it wasn't a Super Bowl, but I coached indoor championship game 2 years ago. And it's a game where everything that could have possibly went wrong at the start of the game went wrong. And we were always trying to catch up. We'd get within a touchdown. But to me, that game took so much out trying to catch up just because like your heart's racing the whole time, like you feel like you have to do something right now or your season's over with.
Yeah, I don't know with this staff though, because you've got Gary Kubiak, who is assistant coach in 32 and 33.
Well, I'm talking players more than anything though. No matter how good a coach you are, your player's still in that situation. Especially if you're the guy that made the mistake, then you're the guy that forever is going to be shown on the highlights of the penalty that cost you the game or the fumble that cost you the game. And I think everything is magnified so much. It's not a normal game. The whole world's watching. And even though I know that when you play a game, once the game starts, you even forget there's a crowd there. But still, at some point, in a situation where it's the Super Bowl, though, I think you played in the Super Bowl. And, when things went wrong, what was your thought?
They weren't wrong. They went wrong for us bad. But, no, you know what? They went, And, no, when you're out there, you're playing so hard. You're doing what you do week in, week out, what you've been trained to do, like Pavlov's dog. You take those reps. You're taking that same rep, thousands and thousands and thousands of times, and you're just trying to do the best you can. And you're not, with John back there behind us, we always felt we didn't care if we were down by 7, 10, 15, 21, 28. We always felt like we could get back in the game with him, and it's just a matter of us doing our jobs. And so I really honestly don't think it's a player thing as much as it would be a coaching thing. But I think the staff is so seasoned, and then you've got Peyton.
How about this? It could be either, but you had John Elway behind you. It's just like if you got Joe Montana behind you, or you got Tom Brady or John Elway, you're not going to panic that much because you have complete faith in that guy. But if you've got Cam Newton or an older Peyton Manning, there has to be question coming in the game about both of them in this situation just because Cam's never been in it. And the last 2 times Peyton's been in it, it hadn't worked out real well.
Yeah, and I agree. So that's what makes this game so dang interesting. You know what I mean? And that's why we're having this conversation, and that's why people are listening to us because they're thinking the same thing, and that's what that's what the media does before this game. They create controversy. It's that good cop, bad cop, and as much controversy as they create, is going to be created and drama, et cetera, and that's what sells tickets and gets people gambling and doing all the crazy things that happen. What's funny though? This whole week in Denver has been phenomenal. I can't tell you. Everywhere I go, there's jerseys. Everybody wears jerseys. It was Bronco. It was Orange Friday. I spoke at a luncheon on a Thursday for a competitor real estate company. I was asked to come to the company's function.
You charged them, didn't you?
Oh, no. You kidding me?
Come on.
This is Colorado.
Hey, Mark, real quick. We've only got about 30 seconds left. So
you bet. Yeah.
if you want to go ahead, just last thoughts. Keep it to about 10 seconds.
Yeah, no, hey, you know what? Go Broncos. It's going to be a great game. I'm excited. I can't wait. I'm on the edge of my seat already.
All right. Well, hey, thanks for coming on. We're going to have to bust Leon's butt for not being on here now so we could hear about his Super Bowl experience, but I guess we'll have to get that at a later time. Make sure you check out the Grilling Truth Facebook page. Check out our sponsors, Gridiron Mo, SteelbergBox.com, Real Bengals fans. So for Mark Cooper, this is Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grilling Truth, where the legends speak.
Hi, you've reached Burger King. To leave a message, press 1.
Burger King? Listen, I'm a bit of an idea guy. Like croutons, I thought of that. I got a great idea to make your burgers better. 2 words, buttery sauce, because that makes everything taste better. You with me?
Sounds good. It's almost as good as the new extra-long buttery cheeseburger from Burger King. 2 beef patties topped with veggies and a rich buttery sauce on a toasted bun. Now just 2 for $5. Or mix and match with the Flame Grilled Chicken Burger, part of the 2 for $5 deal. The new extra-long buttery cheeseburger, only at Burger King. Limited time only. Price and participation vary.